Let me throw this one at you. This is not actually a question I had in front of me, but
Yeah.
um, I know a lot of West Indian. We have a lot of West Indian culture. You know, as ethnic people, we're from all over the world,
Yeah.
and I think majority of our concern right now is a lot of people are culturally eating their natural foods that they were raised on,
Yeah.
and they're not necessarily fried foods because
Yeah.
a lot of Caribbean people cook their food.
Mm-hmm.
They use a lot of seasoning and
Yeah.
so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm finding is a lot of people who are Caribbean are, and specifically like in the Brooklyn area of New York, they have very high levels of diabetes, high levels of cancers in women and men and so forth. And one of the things, they eat their natural food. And one of the foods that I know that they're very big on is the ground provision.
Mm-hmm.
Ground provision would be the yam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yam, they eat a lot of dasheen, they eat a lot of other ground,
Yeah.
foods, potatoes and stuff, and they're high in
Sugar.
sugars.
Yeah.
Can you talk about
So
that, please?
so remember we started with this, right? Knowing the difference between sugar and
Sugar.
whole complex carbohydrate. That's key,
Right.
right? Now, this is the other thing. I'm glad you brought this up, because again, diabetes can be a very complicated disease. And so part of my program is educating so that you understand it, right? Um,
Mm.
if you are eating, ground foods, hard in carbs like potatoes or brown rice, things like that, in a high fat environment, absolutely your sugar is going to stay high. And
Mm.
because you're eating in a high fat environment, right? So if your body is high fat, and the thing is, fat will find a way to store itself. Everybody knows that fat will find a way. Fat can be
Anyway.
stored anywhere in the body. It can be stored in your
Mm.
muscles. It'll be stored in your belly or your abdomen section. It'll store itself inside your organs, outside your organs. Fat can be stored anywhere in the body, and that is the problem with diabetes, the fat storage. The more fat you have in the body, the harder it is to process and metabolize those carbohydrates, even the healthy ones. So if you have a high fat diet, which is typically just a standard American diet or just a normal diet is high in fat, you're gonna find it hard to metabolize sugar, right? So what do you need to do if you want to start eating potatoes again? You want to start eating yams again. You want to start eating sweet potato and brown rice and plantains. If you want to start eating those foods, you have to stop cooking with oil. You got to start cutting back on animal products because it's one or the other. If you like your fat, then decrease your carbs, right? Eat more of a keto diet, and also increase the risk of chronic disease and death. If you want to eat more wholesome, I would say God's food, the food that was in the Garden of Eden, that Adam and Eve was given to eat, right? Then eat that in abundance and decrease the amount of fat in your diet. You can't have both. You can't have both.
You can't have the happiness of both worlds.
That's right. Either eat the wholesome plant-based foods on a low-fat diet, or eat a high-fat diet and decrease the amount of wholesome plant-based foods.
Gotcha.
And you tell me what you think is healthier in the long run, right? So there's another study that I love to share, and this is an old study. In 1937, a doctor by the name of Dr. Sweeney, and he wasn't the only one that did this type of study. He proved, to me at least, how powerful this idea of fat in diabetes versus sugar in diabetes. He took three groups of medical students, right? So healthy male medical students, he put them into three groups. One group ate a high-fat diet. I'm talking mayonnaise, oil, butter. I don't know how they did it, but they ate a lot of fat, right? Another group, they ate a lot of protein. So they're eating lean meat, egg whites, right? Another group, he put them on a high-sugar diet, a diet of foods that of diabetics should never eat. So white sugar, bread, pasta. He put the right. So you have the high fat diet, the high protein diet, and the high sugar diet. I mean sugar, real sugar, not the healthy stuff, right? He put them on this diet, and then he gave them a glucose challenge test. What is a glucose challenge test? A glucose challenge test is simply seeing how your body tolerates sugar, a load of sugar, right? And he tested them 30 minutes, after 60 minutes, and after an hour, and after 2 hours. How their body responded to a load of sugar. I believe it's 50 grams of a sugary mixture. Drinking that and testing their blood in 30 minutes, in 60 minutes, in 2 hours. The high fat group, the group that ate a lot of fat prior to the test, their sugar stayed high. And these were not diabetic. They were even diabetic. But their sugars were over 100. After 2 hours, their sugar was over 140.
Wow.
Non-diabetic. The high fat diet.
Yeah.
The high protein diet, their sugar after 2 hours wasn't as bad as the high fat diet, but the high protein diet, it was still elevated. It was still high.
It went up a little bit.
It still was high. Do you believe that the high sugar, which of course by extension low fat diet eaters, when they tested their blood sugars after 2 hours, it still remained under 140?
Wow.
Weird. It's weird, right?
Increase.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
Why? Think about it. These were obviously not diabetics, right? But they have also did the same thing with diabetics and saw same results, right? This proves to us what is the real problem with diabetes. Is it the sugar? Is it the apple? Is it the banana?
Fat.
It was the fat. It was the fat.
Makes sense.
So even if I was to eat sugar and get rid of fat, I'd be doing myself a favor. Right? So because you're
and then what you're saying makes sense, because again, sugars turns to fat anyway.
Exactly.
So here you go, you're doubling up on.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because then that becomes the problem, really, because then now in our diets, not only are our diets too high to have too much fat, but we also have processed sugar turning into fat. Right? So obviously that third group, if they continue to eat high sugars, eventually they'll turn to diabetics too, because that sugar, your body can only process so much sugar. So when you get processed sugar, not complex, because a complex sugar like I say complex carbohydrate like a potato, it has fiber, it has water, it has nutrients. So as it goes through your intestinal system, it goes through slowly, right? The fiber slows it down. But if I take a potato, a breakfast cereal, that's second ingredient is sugar, right? The sugar in that food item has no fiber, it has no water, very little water, very little nutrients. The sugar goes straight to my blood, right? It goes straight to my liver. My liver says, help, I can't process this much sugar. Let's start taking the sugar and turning it into fat.
And I'm going to also ask you to, we're kind of going off our track.
I know.
We're still within it. We're still within it.
All right.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you is to talk a little more about the higher fiber. Now, I know you're speaking with the fruits.
Yeah.
When we talk fiber, a lot of times people are going with the bulgur wheat. They're going with what's the quinoa, the couscous.
Yes.
These things. Give us a little elaboration on that area.
So fiber comes from plants. So when you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, you're already high in fiber. You don't need to worry about fiber. So when your diet on the contrary is higher in animal products have no fiber in it. Right? When your diet is full of processed food, cereal and things like that, or things that are stripped of its fiber. For example, if you're eating white rice versus brown rice, right? If you're eating white bread versus wheat bread, wheat bread is processed too. So just because it says whole wheat doesn't mean it's all, it's good for you as a diabetic. But if you're trying to move yourself more towards a whole food diet, meaning a diet that filled with foods that are in its original state, your diet is going to be high in fiber naturally. You don't need to think about it. You don't even need to worry about your fiber content, right? And we know worldwide we don't get enough fiber in our diets. It's something that we don't get because we're all moving towards a more processed way of eating, to eat fast.
Yeah.
It takes too long to chew fiber-rich foods. So we want to eat a burger, and some fries and a drink and maybe a smoothie or something like that, stripping it of its fiber so that we have more time to, make the man some money, right? So I'm telling you,
that's for sure.
It goes deep. No, fibers take too long. To prepare a nice salad, that takes too long. Go get you some fast food real quick. So if you're eating, the more greens you include in your diet, the more fruits you include in your diet, the more lentils and beans you include in your diet, the more grains, whole grains, right? So you want to be eating
Mhm.
quinoa or brown rice, not white rice, or even couscous, because there's different levels of processing, right? And we don't need, for time's sake, we're not going to go into that. But you want to ask yourself, how processed is this food, or how close is this food to its original source?
Great. Yes.
You know, the
Yes.
closer it is to its original source, I like to say, the closer it is to God's hand, the more healthy
Oh,
it
that's
is.
so good.
And,
That is so good, Louis.
and on the opposite end, though, opposite
The
ends
closer it is to
to
the
God's,
Lord's hand,
yeah,
that's the best food to
to eat.
eat.
The
Isn't
opposite
that a
is
blessing?
true, and the opposite is true, right? Think about it. Then the closer it is to man's hand, and that meaning more processed, refinement it went through. The,
The no good it is
yeah,
for us.
yeah.
It's making us
The
sick.
less healthy it is. So, yeah.
Oh,
So
that is so
it's a
good.
new
That's
way
a
of
good
life.
way of putting it,
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
And that helps people kind of weigh what it is that they're eating.
yeah.
What am I putting in my mouth? Is this going to benefit me? And that's the next thing. Thinking in terms of long term. Will this benefit me 2 weeks from now, a month from
Yes,
now, a year
yes.
from now? Because this stuff goes in and it stays in.
It stays in.
Though we go through our digestive process,
Mm-hmm.
certain things still stay in the body,
Yep,
and it affects a long term, like you mentioned.
yep,
And that's real conversation right there, and
yep.
thoughts that we need to keep in our
In our
mind
minds.
actively as we eat. Our eating is who we are,
Yes.
and
Yep. You are
I
what you
think
eat.
that plays a huge role.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So let me go back here, and so you told us a little bit about some of your experiences and some of your clients. You told us about the rich testimony of your wife and how
Mm-hmm.
this has turned her around. Um, Going forward,
Mm-hmm.
what would you kind of suggest to people who are pre-diabetic, diabetics, who are trying to take this challenge of
Okay.
making changes? Where should they start? Give me a starting
Okay. Good.
point.
Good. So if I were to start anywhere, I would start. Well, I would start with this advice: go slow, because you didn't start eating this way overnight, right? How you're eating it's probably a lifelong habit, right? And we got food addictions and food cravings that are going to be hard to beat. So if you're going to make a change slowly, and I would say first start with one meal a day, right? Instead of trying to get all or nothing, say I'm gonna start with my breakfast. I'm gonna try to master my breakfast, right? Meal or
Mhm.
whatever it is, whatever you know you have time for, right? Might just be just a couple meals in a week, but try to go slow in your change. That's my first advice for sure. The
Mhm.
next advice I would say, if you're gonna get rid of, if you're gonna start to make changes, is start to think of the amount of fat in your diet, obviously, right? So that's where you're trying to adopt a more plant-based diet, right? Start to wean yourself off of the meat and the chicken and the eggs that we love, right? It's not gonna, and again, refer to step one, slowly, right? You want to make those changes slowly, and so that it can be sustaining, right? And
Mhm.
then number three, I would say that's when you start to think about your processed sugar as well, right? So
Mhm.
whether it be sodas or sweet drinks or snacks and pastries, the obvious sources of processed sugar were probably the first thing to eliminate, right? So go
Right.
slow, make the changes in your own time, in your own pace, know yourself, right? You're not going to accomplish it overnight. And number two, start to eat more of a whole food, plant based, thinking about how you can eliminate the animal products or limit it, And then number three, trying to cut back on the processed sugar.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Louis, thank you so
Yeah.
much. And I'm also going to kick in another question.
Sure.
For people who might have already experienced the worst cases of diabetes, like
Yeah.
they've lost limbs or, they're going through that hard part
Yeah.
right now. Is it too late to turn back? Can we
Never.
reverse this at this point? Or is it something that you got to throw your hands in the air?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
It's you can never, it's never too late to start to improve the complications of diabetes. Now, whether or not you can reverse it, that's a loaded question. um, I can't say for sure that every single person who eats this way is going to never need medicine and never going to have problems. That's just not true, because everyone's at a different spectrum when it comes to their insulin resistance, right? But I know that no matter where you are in your insulin resistance, no matter how advanced your pancreas is in its disease, right, and its ability to produce insulin, you can improve your diabetes health, because your body can actually start to regenerate what's damaged. So you, if especially if you're type 2 diabetic, type 1 diabetic, and I know we didn't really go to the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes there, but it should be acknowledged that type 1 diabetics, they have absolutely no use. Their pancreas actually has no use and no as far as making insulin. So they are on a track or a path where they'll need lifelong insulin injections. But even them, if they adopt a whole food plant-based diet, what many people have found and many studies have shown, the amount of insulin they need decreases. Right. So a person that might be on I've had patients at 100 plus units of insulin. Once they adopt a whole food plant-based diet, they're down to 30 units of insulin a day. So no matter how far along you are in the disease process, you can turn things around. You absolutely can.
Very good. And that was one of my, and this is how I became so intrigued with your work. And I think I mentioned this to you. I myself went to school for public health, and I started research. And one of my articles that I wrote was chronic kidney disease, CKD, and the reversal with plant-based.
Yes.
The only thing I didn't do, I did not have the chance to apply it, like I mentioned to you.
Yeah.
I hadn't run the tests. I didn't do the work, And I came across your page, and I'm like, this guy's doing exactly what my study was.
Yes, yeah.
And I became so passionate. I said, oh my gosh, I got to get to know this guy.
That's awesome.
I got to talk to him. And that is how this came together. And I'm looking forward to working with you sincerely on, with patients and people who are struggling.
Yes.
And if we can just, even if it's one at a time, if we can meet people and help them along the way, I think that's the biggest piece of the puzzle. This has been an epidemic within our communities. A lot of people feel helpless. They feel like people don't understand. I want to break that. I want to close the gap, and I want to bring this information to them. So this right here is like an opening for many people that they can get this opportunity to get this information.
Yes.
And you, like myself, saw a need. You stepped in and you're doing it, and you're seeing it, and you have the results. And that's what really matters right now. And I think this could just really be an essential piece to a lot of people who are struggling with disease.
Yes, I believe so too. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up now because I think you covered everything and maybe even more than what I had to ask you. So tell our viewers a little bit how they can reach you and how could they get started on a healthier path.
Okay, so I try to keep it simple. So my email is Lewis, that's Lewis, at lewisbertus.com. So my first and last name, Lewis, last name is Bertus. So Lewis at lewisbertus.com is my email if you want to reach out to me through email. And also my website is just as simple, my first and last name, lewisbertus.com. And also I have a YouTube and Facebook channel, so you can check me out on there by simply searching Diabetes 180. That's Diabetes 180, either on YouTube or on Facebook, and you should find my groups and my channel there as well.
Wonderful. And as for coaching, I do health coaching. My health coaching is designed to assist people who are dealing with diabetes. I'm not certified to work in that specific area, but I am able to help you on the road if you are trying to get on good health path. And I would definitely recommend anyone who I come in contact with to you to assist them on any journey that they have and they're trying to overcome. They could reach me at ACHC, Absolutely Health Coaching, Absolutely Complete Health Coaching. And you can reach me on both Instagram and you can reach me on Facebook.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Lewis.
Yes,
I think
Charmaine.
this was such a beautiful, very informative podcast meeting we had.
Yes.
I enjoyed it, and I look forward to working
with you.
I
know we'll be continuing to work with each other. I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my time and experience.
Absolutely, and thank you for making the time available to do it. I appreciate it.
All right.
Have a
Yes.
wonderful day.